Hey, what's up people? In today's episode of 4-inch folders, I want to talk about a knife that's technically not 4 inches in blade length, but I still would put it in that size category. It's a couple millimeters over the 4-inch mark. Anyways, I think it's part of this category. It's a large folder, one-handed opening, and a strong locking system. And yeah, the broken skull is one of the weirdest names in Cold Steel's lineup. I think it's just a bad branding, and they put this ugly name hugely on the front side of the knife, which yeah, is kind of stupid, but that's what it is. Cold Steel is kind of cringy sometimes, and yeah, that's what it is. That's what you get with Cold Steel knives. That's what we love about Cold Steel knives, that they are who they are. At least that they were who they were. They are not really Cold Steel anymore. Anyways, different topic. The broken skull. What you get is a really large kind of modern interpretation of like any old lockback clip point. You know, these kinds of knives, they have been around for not forever, but for a long time now. I remember growing up that everybody had knives like this in their pockets. So like a solid lockback with a clip point. This happens to be an old German one. Not sure the name of this one. It's a really shitty kind of overall construction, but it's a solid work knife. It has a lot of things that are wrong with it, but you know, it has been around forever, and it still works. And this is the kind of knife that we are looking at here, just in a more modern version. Most of these old clip point hunters, they have been like really thick and heavy because they used brass or nickel on the bolsters and liners, and this is the opposite. This is super slim and super lightweight. And what's the actual weight on this guy? 88 grams, which is 3 ounces. That's super lightweight. To put that into perspective, here's a Spyderco Endura that is smaller, has less cutting edge, is smaller overall, and is still heavier. This is lighter than an Endura. Not by much, but it is lighter than an Endura, and the Endura is not known to be a heavy knife at all. So this is super lightweight for the size, I would say. And super slim, super easy to carry. It even features an aluminum backspacer, which is even crazier that it reaches the weight that it has, but aluminum is not a heavy material, I guess. But it also helps with the weight balance. This knife is not front heavy like a lot of Cold Steels are, and I really like that it is a well-balanced knife. You can also use the aluminum back here to pound on things and not damage your, I guess, G10 backspacer, if it would be a G10 backspacer. Yeah, the G10 on this is a little bit textured. It's like not the grippiest G10 ever, but it's decently textured. The pocket clip works really well. This knife doesn't sit overly deep in your pocket, but it's not sticking out by much. If you're wearing the same color as the G10 is, it's not that noticeable at all. It's kind of wide for how slim and lightweight it is. It's a little bit wider, as most cold steels are. They just, even though the blade is not super wide, but it sticks out a little bit. But I still think it carries really well. This is the kind of knife that you even have to check on if it's still there. If you carry it, let's say in like your bag, in jeans or something, yeah, carries great in the back pocket as well. I really like to carry it in the back pocket and carry a different knife in the front. That's the kind of knife we are looking at here. Long cutting edge, clip point, buoy style clip with like an upswept. So it has some curvature to it. It's not a straight clip. What's the difference here? I think straight clips are easier to point at things, and then these buoy clips, or upswept clip points, they are a little bit, they have a little bit more cutting edge, and they're good at doing this sort of motion, at the draw cut, and you have to be a little bit more careful because they want to go into things a little bit easier, so you need to be more careful because they're not as easy to point as like straight clips. I think that's the main difference here between these two different styles of clip points. And yeah, this is kind of old school in a sense. Most clip points we see today are straight. This is really an old-fashioned way of doing it, and that's kind of cool about this knife, that it is an old-fashioned design. I mean, there is not a lot of things going on here. It's a clip point blade with a lock back, in this case the triad lock, but it's still a lock back, and it's simple in that sense, and that's kind of what I like about this. It has a really strong lock and a nice performing thinly ground clip point. I think it's like 18 thousandths behind the edge out of box. Not too bad. Could be slightly thinner behind the edge, but it's still a production knife. We have to keep that in mind. And I think it's slightly over 100 euros, or at least that's the price before inflation. And yeah, I own this for about 4 years now, I think. I carry this a lot during the summer, not so much in the winter usually. I mean, I carried it recently quite a bit, but usually I don't. I only carry it during the warmer periods because in the winter times you get away with a much heavier, bigger knife, and this is really easy to carry during summer. So I usually carry something heavier in winter, and this only during the warmer periods, or when I wear shorts and stuff. And yeah, as you can see, I usually drop it like this. You have to be a little bit careful. A good indicator is that corner right here. If you keep your finger behind that corner, you are fine. If you have it sticking out too far, you may end up cutting yourself, so you need to be careful to keep it back here. But you can really close it like any other cold steel without an issue. There is a bit of space here that can fall on your finger without cutting yourself. So yeah, if you close it like this, you're going to be fine. Is it the best cold steel ever? As I'm not able to open it. Is it the best cold steel ever? I don't know. I don't think so, because I think the build quality on some other cold steels is just slightly higher. I mean, it's well centered, the action is fine, the lockup is fine and everything, but it kind of feels a little bit cheap. Not as high quality, and certainly not as well priced as some of the other cold steels. If you take, for instance, a Voyager, whenever I take a Voyager into my hand, I feel like I get a lot more knife than what I pay for. And with this one, I feel it's adequately priced, slightly over 100 euros. It shouldn't cost more. And I think the big benefit here is the XHP steel. That's a little bit of a higher performance than what you usually get in that price range. Although I think you now get S35 yen and not XHP anymore. I certainly prefer XHP. Talked about this a lot in my videos. I like XHP quite a bit. You just need to take into consideration that XHP is not, even though it has like 16% chromium, it's not as corrosion resistant as you think it would be, because most of that chromium is not in solution but tied up in carbide. So it's really focusing more on edge retention than on stainlessness. So you can rust XHP, which is a good thing that it is coated here. It's really difficult with a DLC coating to rust XHP. But a non-coated XHP, that can actually happen if you, for instance, sweat on your knife, and the salts in your sweat can stain your blade. So XHP is really focusing more on edge retention, and it's got a lot of edge retention, that steel. It's difficult to resharpen once it's completely dull, so it's a good steel to strap back regularly. As long as you do that, you're just fine. I think the toughness on the steel is also better than it should be. Technically, it shouldn't be as high, but I have never had issues with chipping on XHP personally. That might be due to the heat treatment that we see on these steels. And yeah, but technically XHP shouldn't be the toughest steel. I cannot confirm that. I think it's a high edge retention, decently at toughness, and really bad at resharpening kind of steel. And yeah, so as you can see, by the way, these are coated on the backside, so you will wear down that coating over time. It's not how you technically should do a knife. You should leave this portion uncoated, but yeah, so it's not the smoothest knife that it could be, but it's still very smooth overall. I wish these wouldn't be coated though, even though it helps with corrosion resistance. I think they would look a lot better if they would be like stone washed or satin ground. And yeah, sometimes I feel like I want to change the G10 and put like nice wooden scales on this and take off the coating. So this would be like a future mod that I might do on this knife. We'll see how about that if I actually do it. But yeah, at some day I would like to do it, change the handle scales for something nicer, because this G10 kind of feels cheap at sometimes, and not at sometimes, but it kind of feels cheap. So yeah, and yeah, like I said, the coating is not, it doesn't fit the overall aesthetics of the knife. I think it would look better uncoated. There is a cheap version of this, or a less expensive version of this, with like plastic scales and a stone wash, and it comes in, I think, the 4116 steel or something like that, and that only costs like 50. I think below 50 bucks you can get the less expensive version. Yeah, I would totally go for that. It's not, I think you don't get a huge increase in performance paying 100 euros more for the S35 yen version. I think XHP is quite an upgrade, but S35 yen, even though it's a good steel overall, I think it's not worth 100 bucks more. So the less expensive version might not be the worst thing ever. I think it kind of really competes with the more expensive version. Cold Steel always does that. They have a lot of versions of their knives that compete with other knives in the lineup. Yeah, and on the other hand, you can say they give you a really good price for really interesting designs. Oh, by the way, speaking of designs, a cool thing about this is kind of old school, also not in the way that it has the buoy clip, but also that the spine is straight, and then the cutting edge is not straight but at an angle. Maybe you can see that. I put it like this, you can see it a little bit easier. So this cutting edge actually comes in at an angle, which means you drag the material really into this far forward belly, so it excels at cutting tasks really well, because this whole cutting edge is at an angle. That's how people used to do knife designs back in the days. Yeah, this kind of design feature has been around for a really long time. Kind of got lost nowadays, but it's cool that Cold Steel still has this design feature. I think this knife design has been around from other companies as well. I'm not sure if this is an original Cold Steel, probably not. Or has Cold Steel made a version of this in the past? That was, I think, the Lone Star was kind of a knife. I'm not sure who made the Lone Star though. Was it the Cold Steel or not? I don't know. But this design has been around for a while, kind of got lost to history, and then reintroduced by Cold Steel. And yeah, it's like I said, it's just a modern interpretation of a good old clip point lockback. And if you like clip points and lockbacks, you're really gonna like this knife, because it's really slim, lightweight, and easy to carry, but gives you a ton of cutting edge and really good performance overall. So yeah, I think this is a great knife. It might not be the most well-made knife ever, it might not be my favorite knife ever, but it is a really good knife and I'm glad to have it. And yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you guys for watching, and maybe see each other in another video. Goodbye, people.